Hey everyone, welcome back. We are back today with our another Q&A office hours. So today we're going to talk about oh sorry, I had another video going in the background. So today we're going to talk about our Figma to WordPress process, and as we promised, we want our office hours to be more practical, share more of our processes, share more of our work, share our screen, show you all the good stuff, not just the talking. So it's something I wish was back in the day when we were learning all the design and development, right, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. I wish I had seen somebody's process from start to finish. Like, just I don't have to even talk. Just show me how you get from here to there. Be super helpful.
Yeah, and I'll be looking here on the side because I have my YouTube chat. So if you have any questions, we'll probably get back to the questions at the end of the video. Because first we want to share our screen and walk through some of our projects, and we show you first how we approach a new website project. So like I design and Chris develops, but we are both like designers / developers. So we both have knowledge about, like, I can code, Chris knows enough about design to finish up some of my projects right in the browser, sometimes better than I would do this. So that's very valuable. Like that's my first point of this video. Like if you are a designer, it's very valuable to learn some of the code, at least have a good understanding of a development, how code works, how HTML, CSS works, so you don't create some crazy stuff that are impossible to create. And I know how to code. I still sometimes, design crazy stuff, and Chris is later getting me back on the ground and telling me like this is not possible, or that's something we can't do. So this happens like when you're a creative person and want to impress your client and create all the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing I also have to add, that I hope you won't be disappointed, because we don't have like a magic formula how we take from Figma to WordPress. It's just hard work. Like you have to recreate, you have to design it first, walk through all the stages, and then you have to simply recreate it in the code. There are no tools. We don't use any plugins that converts automatically design to code. I don't believe in any of those. We use some of the tools that help us to like get it faster, be more efficient, but it still has to be done manually.
Yeah.
Chris has to handcraft his code, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned early on as I became a developer, was to learn how to work with designers, because if you don't have a good relationship with the designer on the project, your life can be pretty tough. It can be really tough to solve a problem. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about working with Rafal, is when I hit a roadblock or something is extremely challenging, working with Rafal to find a solution that works and still stays with the aesthetic, but is actually, we can develop it within the time frame for the project. So that's always fun.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now.
Yeah.
So this is one of our projects, one of our recent projects we're working on this year. It's you can find it live on fusebox.fm. Great products, by the way, created by Pat Flynn's team and us. So we wanted to start with this because it's very simple. It was in the beginning, it was just the homepage, so we could focus on one page design, and this navigation would take you back to different sections on the homepage. We added blog later, and that's something we're still working on. That will be like a separate page, but this is where we started with. That was the homepage design. And because this is from Figma to WordPress, I'm not going to walk through how we got to this design. Maybe that's maybe a good topic for another video. But that's where we were. We had this homepage mockup, and as you can see, it's pretty long page with different sections. And we didn't have, like, at the design stage, we didn't have all the copies. So sometimes you can see lorem ipsum here and there. But that was a page mockup. So the way we start usually developing, like Chris and I, we start with a call, and I share my screen and we walk through the design. And in most projects, we have this conversation even before I start designing. So at the stage of wireframing, I tell Chris my plan for the website. I tell him my idea, and we go through all the sections so I can get his feedback before even I design it, and see what he thinks about some of the ideas. If this is a good idea, if there are any performance issues that he sees, or something, if the client already uses some sort of plugins, if we want to reuse those plugins instead of creating something new, designing something new. So like we walk through all those stages, all those sections, and make sure at least in the beginning, like the base is correct, and we start off with a solid plan. So
yeah, one of the things that we're really looking for at that point is, because this is on WordPress, usually that means the client is managing the content, but thinking through not just like how we make it look this way, but how the client will end up maintaining the content, and just putting some thought into creating sections and areas where they can actually be able to edit it themselves and not have to hire a developer every single time. So that's planning that ahead, and like having that mindset going into as we move the design is really important.
Yeah, and especially with WordPress, we want to make the content very efficient. And like when we plan those sections, like we think, okay, if there's a section, the content section with subtitle, main title, intro copy, like if we can reuse, because in Chris's mind, this is going to be like a WordPress block. If we can reuse that, in another place on the page, so like have the same concept, and probably there will be a better idea. Better example will be this section where you have this plugin with a plugin logo, title, image on the right, and some copy on the left. And there's a testimonial. There are features listed in the list. And so this could be like the whole one big section. And if you go down, we kind of reuse the same layout, just different orientation. So the image on the left, text on the right, but there's again a testimonial, and there are some features listed with icons. So pretty much the same concept, the same layout, just different colors for different plugin. And it's good both from the design perspective and from the code's perspective. Like from the design perspective, it's good because the design is repeatable. You create some patterns that users can learn when they browse the site. They can learn those patterns and recognize, and your design is more consistent. And from the code perspective, like Chris can code one block and then reuse it in two different places.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I ended up doing. And I'll show a little bit of the code and some of the WordPress editing experience for this site later, but that's what we ended up doing, was reusing a lot of the same blocks and finding what the difference and the variation is between the two. And really it's just a color or flip-flopping an image, but everything else is pretty much the same, and just using a single option to control those layouts, which came out really well.
Like in this design, probably one of the biggest challenges was the background. And like, and like Chris, one of Chris' first question was like how this background works, like how was it created? And by having this conversation, both of us together being in Figma and showing my screen, I can show like this is just a triangle going like in this angle. So if I hide it, it's like it's very simple. So it seems complicated in the beginning, but if you start like hiding some of those elements and decoding this design, then you start seeing like, oh, this is just white header at the top, there's like one triangle here, there's another one and this one should like expand 100%, 100% be 100% wide, and then you have this white background triangle. It could be also like, you know, stick to the top left corner of the page. So, you know, by having this conversation, like you can help developer to figure out a lot of those stuff. So then they don't have to like try to create like crazy shapes that are like connected somehow, right?
To be honest, to create those, I didn't use triangles or anything. I used rectangles and just made them larger than the screen size, and then used like absolute position to move them to where I needed to. But yeah, so you like just using basic shapes and moving them is how we recreated a lot of
and that's very common, right? I know I created some like angled shapes, backgrounds on some of the sites, and that's exactly what I did. Was I created a rectangle and just put it in an angle, and then you have this effect, like there's something in the background. So like, you know, so this background was a tricky thing here. Other than that, like the hero section, for example, like here is this could be like one big illustration exported just as one thing. I don't know if you did it this way or if you made it more dynamic, but I feel like especially that on the mobile screen, you can see it doesn't change. So like it could be exactly the same thing, just scaled down, and it still looks okay. You can still read what's in the image.
I just used one image.
Yeah. That was another tricky part that we discussed, like how, you know, like when Chris saw this section showcase of those podcast covers, like how does it work when you scale down, when you resize the window, when you scale it down. So what we did was just going to also be like one fixed image that, you know, goes off the margins on the both sides, and it can scale down, scale up. Like you don't have to like, you know, create those images as individual elements and like try to create some complicated layouts here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And in my designs, and I think it's very helpful, like I design everything based on a 12 column grid. So if you turn on this grid, you can see also like which sections are supposed to take like half of the screen. So now you can see like those are like 50% of the screen. Like this image goes right up here, takes that much of space of the screen, and the content like fits in another half. Like those arrows are still within the content areas, like they don't go over the content areas. Like, so you don't even have to like measure, think about this, just turn on the grid and you can see all those details. Like those features with icons, like you can see they're split into like 3 equal columns across those 4 grid columns here. So you can see that, you know, you can just split that into simple 3-column layout. Again, like this image takes exactly all the columns here, and the copy takes those 4 grids here.
Yeah, and so that started out as an image, and then we found out later that we needed to make that be the actual showing the plugin in action. So we ended up having to remake that area so that we could feature the plugin working.
Yeah, so by looking at this layout, figuring out all those elements, I feel like that helps you a lot with the layout and like structure your content, how you structure your blogs, how you structure your content, how this is going to be responsive. Like, you know, if you have everything designed in a specific way, like there's only 2 layout columns, 3 column layouts, 2 column layout, then you know it's going to be like you can easily change that into single column on mobile phone, or from 4 columns you can turn into 2 columns on tablet, and then into 1 column on a phone.
Right.
So that's where it comes to layout, to like general thoughts and ideas, and like discussing like the most general concepts of this design. So then we go more into details and like go through all those design features. So let's say this is the title. This like the typography, I feel like is the most like is the is the foundation of the entire theme and
I
design.
think that's where you can go the most wrong. Like if you mess up the font sizes even by a little bit, then everything else, like all of the rhythm just gets off. Like as a developer, and everything ends up not quite right. And it can be very difficult to figure out what it is. And it might just be that your font size is off by a few pixels, or the line height isn't exact what the designer had. So
yeah. So and here we also have to be like both synced. So like when I design, I make sure like everything I use, every piece of copy I use has a style in the style guide. So for example, this title is desktop/h1.hero. And that's kind of my suggestion, like what's CSS class this could be. It doesn't have to be, Chris can choose something else in his code, but that's me telling Chris that this is only a variation to h1 tag, the h1 element. And like this is desktop/p. This is the paragraph style on the desktop view. And so like going through the entire design, you can see like this is h2, this is again paragraph. So you have some repeatable patterns in typography. This font size is not different than this one because it has the same text style applied in Figma. And what I do also in my designs, like I put together a style guide where I list all the fonts, all the sizes, at least the main ones like H1, H2, H3, and there are some variations of them in the design. They were supposed to be here like H1.hero. I usually edit as well. Like I didn't do that for this project. It was small and simple enough. Like there was only one use of H1.hero on this page. But if this was a bigger project and we had like many sub pages, we would go, the style guide will be much bigger. So, and
one thing about that you do really well that I always appreciate, and it's like a small thing, is you create the styles here, and then you create the styles in Figma, and then you only use those. So there is no like adjustment on the fly. There's no, oh, this heading doesn't quite fit the design. I'll just bump the font size down a couple of pixels and call it a day. And that can be really frustrating as a developer when you're dealing with font sizes that are just all over the place and trying to figure out what font size we're using. I usually can just quickly look at the design and guess what the font sizes are because they're repeatable and they're always the same as somewhere else.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a challenge because when I design, I send to a client and the client says, oh, I like this, but can you make this font size like 2 pixels, resize 2 pixels down? And then I have to do this for a client and I need to add on a class for this style. So it's so this is an alternative version of one of those previous styles, and that can complicate the whole design more. But yeah, that's the real life. But what else you can find here in the style guide, like colors, for example. So you can pick the colors right from here, set it up in your CSS, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like Rafal usually labels the colors, use primary 1 or something, primary, secondary, or color 1. And then in my style sheets, my Sass, I have all of those colors just as variables. So then as I'm finding them in the design files, I'm just going by the variable name and not necessarily the hex code, so that I'm not having to make sure all the hex codes are right. But it makes it a lot easier if the client at the last minute decides they don't want to use purple anymore and they want to use hot pink for the branding. It's a lot easier to go through and switch it.
Yeah, and that also works more how you set up CSS, because you usually have the one hex code for a primary color, one hex code for like a secondary color, but you also need like lighter and darker versions of those colors for any highlights, press, hover effects, press effects, hover actions, all those different states. And what I also do for like natural colors, which is the text color or the background colors, like I try to add as many shades as possible. Like maybe not as many, but like try to limit that to, like here you can see it is the 3 means like this is like 3% of this color, like the 3% opacity. And this is like 5, 10, 15, 20. And that's very also useful because like you need in a design all kind of lines, light backgrounds, borders, so you can simply use those shades for all those elements, and
Right.
then the whole design is still consistent.
Yep.
So, and also what else you can find a style guide that's helpful in the development process, like the brand's assets, so you can export the logo in the right format, the icons, the buttons. So here I show the hover effects, press effect disabled. I don't see any sense to put that into mockups, because then it can be confusing, like why this buttons, like has different style than the rest of the buttons, and it can be confusing. So I rather put that in the style guide. The input fields, how they should look. Even if we don't use them in the design, you still have to code them, right? You have to, you still need to have some styles for the form fields. UI, there was not too much UI elements on this page. I think we used tooltip somewhere, so that's why it's here.
I don't remember if I did, but yeah.
Yeah, and this style guide, if you want to use this was based on my design kit. You can find it on my website. So it's basically all the same things. There are colors, typography. There are some places for brand assets, the buttons and input fields. Like everything you see here is in the design kit. If you want to have that as a starter. Someone just asked question, do you have a style guide template to share? So yes, I do.
Do you want to answer? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just saying you can go to my website and find it there.
Cool. I was gonna say, do you want to answer a couple of the questions in the chat, just real quick? We can run through them.
Yeah. Yeah, because we are about to wrap up the design part.
Yeah.
In this process, and then Chris can go and show you some of how he takes it to the WordPress.
Yeah, let's answer a few questions. I don't use like a specific template that's like I purchased. I just use a custom theme that's like, it's more structured around the way that I think and the way that I develop versus somebody else. So yeah, so that's what I use. I just kind of have built onto it over the years, built into my process.
Yeah, I usually use Genesis child theme, the basic one.
Yeah.
And I customize it enough after a few projects, and that's what I was been using for some time now. But I'm not coding that sites that much anymore.
Develop with blocks. Yeah, so for building blocks, I'll build custom blocks if it's something that's going to be reused on multiple projects. If it's for a block for a specific site, then I usually use ACF. And that's just to speed up the workflow for it. So all of the blocks for this site that were custom were built using CF Pro. Do you get all the copy first for fall?
I wish. Yeah, so that's a tricky part with the copy. Like what comes first, copy or design? And that's usually the part of the process where we have wireframes, and I try to figure out the content with the client. So if they don't have copy, I create wireframe like based on the information I was given. And I create a wireframe with my suggestions for the sections. I send that to the client, and they can fill this out with their copy, or we make changes. Or, but in most cases, we have to work with the current copy on the current website, and I just redesign it. I just put my best practices in place, and like try to work with the client's existing content. And redesign it. There might be some sections like call to action or something that is missing, and then I'm asking client to add a copy for this call to action. But yeah, if I was waiting for client like to provide me the copy, I would never start a design.
Yeah, exactly. I do think that wireframes point out like large holes in clients' copy, right? So like when you create the wireframes or mockups and you send them, and you get a lot of, why is there all this Latin stuff? And they quickly realize how much they owe you as far as copy. What other questions? Somebody flips between Figma and Photoshop. What is the advantage of Figma over Photoshop? Quick 1-sentence reason.
Yeah, because Figma has all the styles, all the components. That design works more like the code. I would say that's the biggest advantage, and it's fast. It's much faster
Agreed.
than Photoshop. So Photoshop looks more like static, like a static design.
Yeah.
It's not so easy to reuse some of the elements.
Right. When I developed, I use rems, pixels, EM for typography. I use pixels. I don't see it causing issues. Seems to be fine. I think there's been a lot of debate about this. I really don't know which one is best. Pixels work, and I've never had any issues.
Yeah, I did some research on this, and I have a whole lesson.
Yeah, we had a discussion.
Typography course about this, but like in design, like there's not too many options. Like everything is pixels in your design,
right?
And yeah,
it's just easier. Somebody asked how you create the darker, lighter version of the main primary color.
Yeah, so for the primary colors, if there's like like a purple, what I usually do, I can edit the color, and you can change. That's why I'm looking at HSL, so just like highlights, shadows, and light, I guess. So you can reduce the light for darker colors to like 40 and make it darker. It's better way than like I think if you go with,
I did not know this, because I usually just adjust the transparency and then get the new color.
yeah, with transparency is that if you have a bright color like purple, like blue, if you reduce transparency, it will be just like dull, like blended. I'll show you a difference. So that's for like darker colors.
I did not know this at all.
For lighter, I would go like 60, and you see it's like brighter. And if I reduce this one to like, I don't know if you can see the difference on your screen,
same to me,
but I see it.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I see a difference on my screen, and
yeah, okay. A little
see,
bit.
this is like a grayish purple, and this is like brighter purple.
Got it. I had no idea that you could do that.
And especially you can see the difference when you have like a hover effect, and when you hover a mouse on this color and it turns into this, it's like you took out some of the life out of this color. It's like suddenly became exactly, it's transparent. But if you have it like increase the light in this color, then it's like brighter. It's like, oh, that's the real highlight effect. So that's why I do this. And sometimes I manually adjust, like for blue colors, especially.
I'm learning something here.
Now we have like a design lesson here.
Yeah,
Figma to WordPress, but
I knew about hex and RGBA, but HSL, I had no idea that was useful. I just thought it was just another weird thing.
So like on blue colors, it's a little tricky because like you can increase, like make it lighter like this, and that's what with lightness, if you reduce it here, increase it here, but it also like doesn't work on blues that much because again, it's like make it
interesting.
But you can see this blue. What I usually do, I change the hue and skew it to more like a little bit toward the what is like turquoise color. So then this blue is like more vibrant than the other one. And you can do the same for purple, like turn the purple more into
drew
pink.
Boxes all day. No, that's awesome. I did not know that at all. Very cool. One more question. As a developer, can you build out a design from Figma while offline? You can get to your Figma files offline. You can download them and still open them. I was doing some development from like a plane a few months ago for all this COVID stuff, and it was completely fine. It's difficult to like edit something and then have it sync back up. I don't think that always works from what I've found.
Yeah, if you want to work offline in Figma, and I did that when I was flying somewhere and I needed to use it on a plane, you need to open Figma, like you use app on Mac.
Yeah.
So you want to open the project in Figma and just leave it open. And
yes, exactly.
you can't load a new file when you are offline, but if you already have the file open, you can use it when you are offline. Of course, if you make any changes or if someone makes any changes in the meantime, it will have to sync. I don't know exactly like how it works. If it's like in GitHub, they notify you about
version control.
Yeah. Or if whoever made the most recent changes, they override someone else's changes. But as a developer, you don't have to make changes. You just
so I'm just viewing it, and then like all of my code stuff is in a local environment anyway. So yeah, pretty much can do it the same as any other type of design software. All right, do we want to show? I'm going to show or share my screen and show the WordPress backend for the site. Let's see. Maybe. Here we go.
Yep.
All right. So here's the WordPress backend. Like I said, I used ACF to build a lot of the custom blocks, and I'll show that real quick after. So the front page is pretty much the main page. So this is a ACF block, right? And so when you click on it and select it, you can see exactly what it looks like on the front end. And when you click edit, you can then edit the content that's in here. So if I wanted to just make this more exciting, we can do that. And we just have the image. And so we can edit this pretty simply. And if we want to go back to viewing it in a preview mode, there we go. These blocks, or this section, is just using WordPress native blocks. One thing I've done is I've added a, what is it called? A paragraph style to this. And so you can choose it for subheading. So like if I just wanted just the default paragraph or an intro styling or subheading to get the different variations on a paragraph.
And do you,
go ahead.
In a case like this, do you have like a container around those 3 blocks, or how do you specify?
Yeah, this has a group block around it.
Okay. And it also has like a class?
Yep, I gave it a class to give it a little bit more styling so that it, actually there's some styles built in. So by selecting these styles built into the group, it adjusts the styles down here.
Yeah, so that also shows why it's so important to have
to think through
the design process, to make sure you don't have that many variations for different blocks, different styles, because then you have to, in the admin, there will be like a list of 20 different styles for a block, right?
Right, exactly. This was a hacky solution for this angled background stuff, but I needed to be able to move it between sections. So that's where we ended up with for that. This is using WordPress blocks. Nothing special here. I don't know why this looks like this, but it does. I'll have to look into that later. Here's that player block that we were showing. It has the 2 variations. And what I did was you just have a way of selecting the product. So if it's the player or the transcript. And the only thing that's doing is it's changing the background image behind the image. That makes sense. And then changing the image location left or right. So these, again, you are just blocks. You can click edit and you can edit all the information for this specific block and change the color. It's green, blue, gray, purple. I don't know why I added extra colors, but
Yeah, so even if if you have different sections and
Right.
they can look different, but if they have the same data inputs, like same the title, it has all the same
Right.
data elements like title, subtitle, image, and then you can create a variation for it. So it could be like left, right, bigger, smaller, but still all the data is the same. So you can reuse the same block with different styles, right?
Exactly. So like this is the testimonial block, and the real variation between them was just the color of the text. So just create a few different color styles. And all that's doing is it's just outputting a class to the block and then just changing the colors. So it's not doing a lot of heavy lifting. For this is, again, just an ACF block. And we have basic, which is just an icon and title, and we have advanced, which adds this extra field of description, which we use in a different place. And then you can choose if you want 2, 3, 2, 3, 4 columns, depending on how many icons you end up with.
Nice.
So like one block with a few different variations between it, and you can change the colors. And because it's using SVG for the icons, we can change the entire thing.
So they're still the same SVG files. You just change the style of it, right?
Right, we're just changing the fill.
That's what I love about using SVG icons. Like you can resize them.
Right.
Like previously, like in a couple of years ago, we had to create like 10 different versions of one icon in different colors, different sizes.
Yeah.
And now you can have like one SVG icon, or if it's a icon font, then you can control it with CSS.
Grammarly. It's like, what is that? So here's that featured block again. And this is one that's at the advanced. So it's just got this extra field for some more description. So I can, if I was to switch it to basic, it's just the title. But same block, so it's a lot easier to maintain, and it just has these few very simple options that just control a few different things. And here's that block again repeated. So this time we have the image on the left. And this is the one for the transcript.
And can you show, because all the sections probably are pretty much the same, but can you show like how do you create a new block like this using ACF?
Yep. So usually what I do is I'll think through what fields I need for this process. So let's see, we can look at the features group. And this was those grouping of icons. So I thought through and I was like, all right, so I have some styles. And this was basic or advanced. So I have those. So I have 2 options there. We also have columns. So do we need 2, 3, or 4? So I create that field. Again, radio buttons, because I only want you to be able to select one option. The color, it's just a select field. And then the item, which is just a repeater. So these options control the entire feature group. And then this is what's called a repeater field. So these 3 fields will repeat over and over. So icon, title, description. And then for each one, you enter in that information. So first I create the fields, and then I will create the outputs for using PHP.
So when you set this up in ACF, how do you specify the markup for this element?
Gotcha. Okay. I can show that in the code. So ACF, we're just using like a PHP template to output those custom fields that we just built. And I have some custom ACF functions in here, but basically you have to register the block. So that block was called features group. And so you just name it features group, give it a description, you give it an icon. Those are the main things that it has to, I believe it just needs those, a title, description, and icon are the only ones that are required, I think. Might be wrong there, I don't know. And then I have, so this has, is called features group. And then in my configuration file, it's looking for a file called features group.php. And so up here we have our variables, which is the item style, the columns, and the color. So we get those using the ACF functions. to get the field for item style, the columns, and the color. And like I said, we're outputting those to the wrapper, and we're just adding classes to those things. And then we're using those classes to control the layout colors in CSS.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted you to show this is because if you are a designer, like I think it's valuable to you for you to see like how much effort the developer has to put in to create one section, like one block that is editable
Right.
in WordPress. So if you are a designer and you design too many different sections, then your project will become very expensive for the client to code it. Because then like Chris comes in and like, oh, I see this section is different, this section is different. And you have to code each section, right, differently.
Exactly.
And it has to put all those settings, everything in place, different variations. And that's what makes the whole project very expensive.
Yep, exactly. Or you end up cutting corners. And that's not a good solution either.
I mean, that's what we often do. Like we want to, like we have a budget for a project, and we often discuss it. And how can we make this design still, make it the best design possible and cut some corners. So we won't go over the client's budget. So we figure out like, let's reduce this section. Like let's make this section looks like this one, so we can reuse this block. So we like go over some of those elements and like try to find patterns and repeatable elements that we can reuse and make sure this works more like a system than like custom design. Like each page is custom designed.
It's not really cutting corners. It makes it way more maintainable too, right? Like if you have 20 different custom sections and something goes wrong or is conflicting, it can be a challenge to figure that out and solve for it. Whereas if you have 8 different custom blocks versus 20, it's a lot easier to maintain as you move forward.
Do you want to answer a few quick questions? We have a few more minutes left.
Yeah, we can do that.
What is the best way to export my Figma design to WordPress site? There's no such a thing, I think, as exporting Figma.
In Figma, there's the export no?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no way. Like, so there's no automatic option feature that would export Figma to WordPress. If there is one, it's not going to be great. I don't think that's any AI at this moment could like figure out all those all those content sections, everything, and make it work well. Maybe if I don't know, if it was designed very according to a specific template, and like maybe that would be possible.
Yeah,
but it has to be manual work. At least that's what we do.
Definitely.
And it's it may seem like this, you repeat this work and there's so much work to do, like you recreate the same steps every time, but also as you recreate those steps with every project, you become faster and you are more experienced, and it's not such a problem anymore. Like you already, like when we design site, we already think in terms of content and elements and like blocks. So
we're already thinking about what the custom block scenarios are.
Yeah, even when we have this first conversation with client and we got this project brief, like we already start building this whole site in our heads and how it's going to be turned into WordPress. And you have to think about the website this way.
I agree. For WordPress common blocks, do you assign them a custom CSS class, and in that class you put all the styles with responsive to? Yeah, so if it's used in one place, I'll give it a custom class. If it's used in multiple places, I will give it a custom style. So I'll give it like a style override. We can probably, maybe we can do another office hours on that sort of stuff.
Do you use a plugin to use SVGs in WordPress, such as Save SVG?
I don't usually upload SVGs to the WordPress admin area, just because clients aren't usually working with them. If I'm using SVGs, they're usually for the UI elements. So it's something that like I'm doing from a development perspective, and I'll just use those within my code.
How do you make to give SVG icons different colors?
So and Rafal taught me this one. If you remove all of the color files or the color instances within the SVG file, then you can use a fill property using CSS. You can target the SVG and give it a fill color, and then basically we're just changing the fill using the CSS. You can just
I have a tutorial
one file
about this on my website. I will share a link in the chat. In a moment, you can answer another question in the meantime.
Okay. If you don't have time to go over the business side or client management, would you be able to do another office hours for doing this? Yeah, I definitely think we can do an office hours on client management, managing expectations with clients, how to communicate with clients. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff we can talk about there. I think that's all the questions.
Yeah. One thing we wanted to do was maybe like go through the process and split that into a more office hours calls. So we go through the process, like how we take on a project from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
And so maybe that could be an idea for another time. All right. Thank you, everyone. And we're going to share this a link to this office hours, so you can watch a replay. You can go to copilot.fm and subscribe if you want to watch us another week. I don't know, we're gonna do this next week. If you have ideas what we should talk about next week, let us know. Send us emails or reach out to us on Twitter, on Instagram. All right,
we're doing it next week, by the way.
Yeah,
just made the call. All right.
All right, thanks
for
everyone.
being here.
Bye.